Hello and welcome to the Batcave, your secret hideout for Brawl gameplay and deck tech videos. I am your host, BlindBat8719. On today's video, I want to be going over really quickly my decks that I made over on Reddit. The Brawl subreddit had a contest where they challenged everybody on the subreddit to make a pre-con similar to the Brawl Eldraine pre-cons, and they were going to make a contest out of it. By the time I'm recording this, I had already submitted my entry, but I figured one of the hallmarks of the contest is that these were kind of on the budget side, where each deck includes only one mythic rare and up to 11 rares. Each of my decks have one mythic and 11 rares in them, and I thought if somebody is new to Brawl or they want some directions and whatnot on how to build something on a budget, let's say on Arena, I thought I'd share this with my audience to give them some ideas if they don't have, how you could build something kind of cheap. And I'll also put a link to the subreddit down below specifically for the contest. They have a flair for contest on the side of the subreddit, so you just click on that so you can see some of the other entries that people had come up with. A couple of things that I had, or rules that I made for myself when I was building these decks. One, they each had to include at least one rare dual land. Two, they had to include an alternate commander. And three, had to include cards that I believe people would actually spend their money on. While these decks lists are just for fun, I did try to make these as close to possible as something that WotC would actually sell people, so I wanted to include cards in these decks that people would actually want to spend their money on. Alright, so let's do a quick overview of Dennick. So Dennick, Pious Apprentice, is an aggressive Spirits tribal deck that looks to use the graveyard as a second hand of cards, replaying early threats that my opponent thought they had gotten rid of. Up here we have the rares that I haven't set. Again, here's the rare land, that's a dual land. Memory Deluge, Sparring Regiment, Skyclave Apparition for some removal, Patrician Geist to help the spirits, because there's a Disturb theme to the deck, so a lot of the creatures on the front face might be a human, but when they pay the Disturb cost, they will come back as a spirit, so that's why the Geist is in here. Faithful Absence, because it's an amazing white removal spell. Malevolent Hermit, I think, is a fairly fun card for this deck. It really helps with tempo. Monk class, something that I thought would be different to try out. One of the things I found, though, it may be a glitch in the game. When you use the first level of Monk class, you will see the cost reduction in for the cards in your hand, but you won't see it for the cards that are in your graveyard that you can cast. When you play the spell from the graveyard as your second spell, the cost is accurately applied, but you won't actually see it visually. So you have to at least remember when you do play this deck, be mindful that cards you cast from your graveyard, the cost won't be adjusted on the screen. You just have to know that it will actually cost you one less. Paladin class to kind of pump the board up a bit, and then Ascendant Spirit could easily just take the game over by itself. So this is definitely a very powerful card. And then the mythic card you would have in here, I think, is Teferi, who slows the sunset. This is a card that can definitely be a more aggressive card by tapping down opposing blockers and such, and keeping up mana. He also is the alternate commander for this deck, as well as Vega. I do think Teferi will probably be the better one, but you have at least another option in Vega. Moving on to the Katilda pre-con. Katilda, Dawnheart Prime, is a human tribal deck that wants to go wide and pump up the team with a variety of Lord effects. That's why, for example, I'm including Maja in the deck, as also it can act as a alternate commander, but really the other alternate commander is the mythic rare Sigarda, Champion of Light. She's the only non-human creature, I believe, in the deck, as well as giving humans I control +1/+1, and then her Coven ability, is whenever she attacks with 3 or more creatures with different powers, look at the top 5 cards of the library, and they put a human card from them into my hand. So it adds a little card advantage. We have the dual land, the rare dual land, that's how I pronounce all of that. Felder Retreat's another pump option along with Rally the Ranks. I think Curse of Silence works well in this deck as being a 1-drop that can slow my opponent from playing the best card in their deck, their commander. Elite Spellbinder to kind of slow things down as well. Adeline, I think, really plays into the deck of getting more humans into play, making things more tokens, and making herself bigger. Guardian Faith to kind of save the board and from a bad thing. So that's the other non-human card in the deck. Briarbridge Tracker, I think, is a great one. It has a little card advantage, and also above average 4/3 for 3. And then Realm Walker to kind of get a little more card advantage out of the deck. Now let's move on to the next one, Xanathar. Xanathar, Guild Kingpin, is a control deck that wants to maneuver the game state to where the opponent cannot impact the board, and I'm killing them with their own deck. Out of the 4 decks that I built, I knew I wanted to include at least one control deck option for players to try out, as if this were an actual thing you'd be buying in the store. Xanathar is the one mythic in the deck. We have the rare dual land Shipwreck Marsh as the rare dual land. And then with this one, again, I was trying to play, this is a deck that kind of focuses a little bit on the snow land, so that's why I have Icebreaker Kraken here as a big finisher in the deck. Blood on the Snow for some removal. Zerasan the Trickster as the alternate commander. He can play pretty well as a control deck finisher as well because he comes in with Flash, so you can hold up some counter spells, and then if you don't do anything on turn 5, you can just flash in Zerasan if you want to make him your commander. Mind Flayer, I think, won't be a card you would see included in a deck like this if WotC were to build it. Graven Lore for some good card draw. Memory Deluge, again, is some more card advantage. Skyhawk Scavenger, I think, is an early blocker that can help boost the life total and take care of any small creatures the opponent might be playing out. Skull Shatter is a cheap removal spell to deal with either the biggest thing, essentially, on my opponent's side of the field in terms of mana cost. Siphon Insight's a new card from Midnight Hunt that I thought would be something that the control deck would want. And then another board wipe in black. It's a little bit slow with Spear of Annihilation, but again, as a control deck, you want to have a few board wipes in here, and I thought that this one would be a little different to play out than, say, Crippling Fear, which I think won't really impact the game as much later on. I think if you can time this right, I think this would be the one to have in the deck. But obviously, if you feel like you want Crippling Fear instead, feel free to swap it out. Now let's go on to the last deck, which is Arlinn. And lastly, Arlinn the Pack's Hope is a mid-range deck that wants to flash in 5 and 6-drop creatures as surprise blockers to protect Arlinn or to give them pseudo haste. There are 2 sub-themes in this deck, a +1/+1 counter theme and a werewolf theme. Arlinn herself does not need to be a werewolf tribal commander, but I did include Tovolar Dire Overlord for those players that would want to take the deck in that direction. So Arlinn is the mythic in this deck, and I found that she doesn't necessarily have to be focused on werewolf tribal. She's just a really good planeswalker that could just flash in the best creatures in the format. So that's why I have things like like Froghemoth in the deck. Tovolar's Huntmaster could go either way, because even without being werewolf tribal, this is just an amazing card by itself. Again, we have the rare land in here, the Rockfall Vale. And then, of course, I had to include the Celestas to help control the day-night cycle in the game. Werewolf Pack Leader is a great card for drawing cards. It can get a little tricky being double green on turn 2, but I still think it's a worthy inclusion in the deck. Ranger Class, again, another great card to help get some card advantage to get to level 3, but also just puts the pressure on with the +1/+1 counter on level 2. Reckless Stormseeker gives some creatures haste, which is pretty awesome. Again, Briarbridge Tracker is a great card for card advantage. Again, this deck isn't necessarily solely focused on werewolves. It's focused on the best cards in red and green at the moment. I think Varus Silvery Moon Ranger with his venturing ability adds that little extra effect to the creatures that I'm casting, though I think it's worthwhile to include him. I like him a lot. And then Unnatural Growth is just an amazing card, and I think this would be something that players would want to spend their money on buying a pre-con for a card this awesome. Alrighty, and that is the video for today. Again, these are the deck submissions I made for the contest in the Brawl subreddit. I will leave a link to the subreddit down below. Click on the contest filter on the right-hand side for the flare, and that should bring up all the entries that people had submitted in case you wanted to see what else people came up with instead of just what my thoughts are on the matter. I really did enjoy this contest. I thought it was a great way to practice my deck building skills. Again, having the limit of only 11 rares and 1 mythic made things for a fun challenge, and it also made the decision making a little bit easier because you can't just include all the best rares in the format at one time. If there's a type of video you want to see more of, like budget decks, please let me know in the comment section down below. And when you do that, give me an idea what you define budget as. Is it like these pre-cons where it's 11 rares and 1 mythic, or is it something else? Again, I would love, if this is some content you're more interested in seeing me do, I will try to make this more into the rotation. Please share the video with your friends who are interested in playing Brawl but don't have that many wild cards. Again, that's the whole point of these. You only need about 12 wild cards to build one of these. If you like today's video, please click the thumbs up icon down below. If you really like what I'm doing, please consider subscribing to the channel. As always, thank you very much for visiting the Batcave, and have a great day.